Gen 1 is obviously the best! No, Gen 5 is the best, idiot!
Whoa, guys, you are both annoying. Hey, guys, have you ever heard of this little indie game series called Pokémon? They're these little capturable creatures that you train to become weaponized animals of terrorism. Some of them are just actual animals, others are weird little physical objects, and some are just plain bad to look at. Every time a new generation of Pokémon is revealed, people argue that it contains the worst Pokémon ever created, and that the generation before it, that people at the time also ridiculed, was so much better. It's a cycle that's existed for literal decades now. This is a weird, terrifyingly heated topic, but one that I'm pretty passionate about. So that's what we're gonna talk about today. The subjective and objective change, hits, and misses of the Pokemon art style, and answer the age-old question, Alright, first, we gotta talk about, does Pokemon even have an art style to begin with? What characteristics does a Pokemon need to have to adhere to the most popular franchise's design philosophy? Because the design style created by Ken Sugimori and his connected team surely is not where we've landed now. There's been a gradual departure from the initial design principles of Generation 1, and that might be hard to notice if you jumped into Pokemon later in the franchise, because yeah, they all have animals and faceless thingamabobs and doohickeys, but they're not all built equally or with the same parts. Let's take a closer look at two kinda random Pokemon, slightly cherry-picked for emphasis. A simply designed old-school Nidoqueen and a new flashy Impidimp. You can obviously tell these two aren't from the same generation, and it would be kind of insane if they were, but why? Why is it that when I juxtapose practically any Gen 1 Pokemon alongside Nidoqueen, there exists a sense of natural harmony, whereas if I take nearly any Gen 8 or Gen 9 Pokemon and position them in the same manner, they seem completely out of place. Even if I lump Pokemon from Generation 7, 8, and 9 together, unless you're really familiar with them, it's difficult to tell which generation they came from because most of the time they have drastically different design philosophies. If we're strictly talking about cohesion here, Gens 1, 2, and 3 are objectively the most united. They included more sharp, simple designs meant to accommodate the old pixelated graphics and often share the same details and color structures. And I'd like to explain my point further with an absolutely fucking insane category that I spent too much time analyzing like a psychopath. Hey, hear me out, stop laughing at me, I swear I have a point here, I'm not stupid! You might think this is inconsequential, but the eyes of a Pokemon hold far more weight than you may realize. If you look closely at the first few hundred Pokemon, you can see a clear pattern in how they design their eyes. The vast majority had these angular-shaped eyes with black pupils and often red accents, and if the Pokemon had an evolution line, the eyes would start in a more cute rounded manner and get more angular as they evolve. You can see this effect with almost every Pokemon in the first generation, the only outliers being the subcategory of dot and line eyes that also sometimes follows the previous rule as seen with the Alakazam evolutionary line. This pattern can be followed into the second and third generations and starts to somewhat fade in the fourth and gets a little rocky when we enter the fifth. So, if we take the original eye structure from the first generation and break it down into 4 categories, we have the classic eye shapes, their alternate slightly different versions, dot or line eyes, and completely unique eyes or Pokemon that have no eyes at all.
I can't see anything! Why did God make me like this?
These 4 categories would mostly stay strong throughout the first 500 Pokemon or so, even with the addition of colored variants like the Aggron and Sceptile lines, and them falling slightly in love with the filled black eyes with white shines, which you can see most of them in the 3rd generation. But what we can clearly see is the eyes of Pokemon had a consistency within their own generation, and any unique eyes were used for emphasis to show a Pokemon's weird nature or creepiness, like with Sableye, Dustox, Spinda, Spiritomb, Watchog, Starmie, and even Esper later on. These Pokemon purposely have weird eyes as a personality trait. But when you get to the 7th generation, the majority of Pokemon have completely different eyes and evolutionary design structures. While Pokemon like Zorora retain the classic original eye shape and the Incineroar line showcases a colored variant reminiscent of the mid-early generations, the majority rule that once prevailed has now shifted to become the minority. The generational cohesion is now gone. Now, is this bad? Is it stupid to like later gen Pokemon? Of course not. Gen 8 gave me Appleton, and for that, I am forever grateful. But I'm trying to mostly separate personal preference with objective change here, and I can still absolutely love Pokemon that completely go against design cohesion. Let's take a peek at the Vikavolt line. It starts out with this little grubby guy, and then turns into one of my favorite Pokemon, Charjabug, which is, he's like a bus or something, and then turns into Vikavolt, which is like a fighter jet, I guess. All the while having 3 completely different sets of eyes and a vague insect vehicle gimmick. Oh, yeah, that's something we should definitely talk about, the rise of gimmick designs in modern Pokemon. Whoa, what the hell? That's not a Pokemon, it's...
Today's sponsor.
My singing monsters, everybody. You like that? You like little fellas, huh?
Little dudes that scream.
Well, boy, do I got 'em.
Step right up, we've got this little bastard. And don't forget about this damn thing. Oh, you're talking to me. Babe.
Oh, gee whiz, I love these funky little dudes, but I wish their thunderous screams could harmonize to create music.
In a world of mobile games that make literally no sense at all,
Protect the village by popping the zombie pimples and while your parents are getting divorced in the background. Also, I have a big dump truck fat ass.
I'm genuinely excited to be sponsored by a classic OG that everyone's happily familiar with, where the entire premise is collecting zany little creatures and forcing them to make music for you like some cruel, unforgiving god. So, if you're weird like me and want to make your own little
Goblin music.
click the link in my description and use code CIRCLETOONS for a special in-game gift. All right, back to it. Outside of the obvious low-hanging fruit that is the purposely ugly-looking extra-dimensional Ultra Beasts,
Which I could make an entire fucking video on how awful these things are.
we've also seen a gradual increase in Pokemon that have gimmicks or weird one-note design elements. Call it an inevitable product of time or idea scarcity, but that seems to be the case. Early generations got the unfair advantage of being the first to do everything, so they could get away with being as simple as they wanted.
This is a seal.
Yes.
His name is Seal.
A bird, a bug, a grass, a ghost. You seemingly can't get away with just being a ghost now. Now your ghost Pokemon needs to be a ghost dragon that's simultaneously based off of an ancient tetrapod and a US military modern-day B-2 stealth bomber. And I actually really fuck with Dragapult, but he has an objectively complicated design. Another example, Gen 2's starters were a plant dinosaur, an alligator, and a fire echidna. Pretty simple, easy to identify, and more animal in nature. Gen 8 started absurdly strong with 3 outstanding starters, and then turned into what we now arguably remember as the most divisive final starter evolutions to date. A gorilla that plays the drums, a rabbit that plays soccer with an anime-style fireball ball, and a lizard that becomes a James Bond-style hitman with a water sniper rifle perched up on a sniper tower? I, for one, no longer feel like I'm training a powerful creature. I feel like I'm training a fucking man. Not only do all of these Pokemon end up far more gimmicky and silly, but they're also more anthropomorphic, which has heavily divided the fan base since the start. Why couldn't they have just let you be a big cat? Then you have the battle gimmicks like Mega Evolutions that are super hit or miss, where most of the time, instead of adding on a meaningful natural evolution, they kind of just locked onto one aspect of the Pokemon and cranked it up to 11 on the dumb dial. Salamence, but it is now stupid. Manectric, but it is now stupid. Latios and Latias, but now they're the exact same and purple and stupid. Lopunny, but now it has ripped thigh-high leggings? Oh my god, who did this? Whose choice was this?
Hey.
Same sort of deal with the Gigantamax stuff. Outside of a few bangers like Fat Pikachu or Snorlax with an entire park on his stomach, it's pretty one note. Guy is now big guy! And don't even get me started on the goofy fucking terrible stylized shit where they just slapped a fucking dumbass crystal hat on the fucking thing. I don't know, it all just starts to feel more tacky and two-dimensional. Wait! Is that a segue? Oh shit, it's the big one. This is the part where you really feel the age of the series.
Oh, my knees hurt.
2D sprite-based Pokemon versus 3D fully animated Pokemon. And yes, I put massive quotation marks on the word animated because, whoa, it's not very good. Whether you label it as a graphical issue, a hardware limitation, or a production crunch problem, the outcome remains the same. The newly released Pokemon consistently receive poor representation. Pokemon that used to have dynamic, static poses are often reduced to just standing there, which would be fine if they had extremely polished dynamic attack animations to brighten up the downtime. But even then, most of the time, they have a handful of basic animations, sometimes literally just model tilts and hops. See, before Game Freak went all third dimension on us, simple animations were good enough, not only because of the graphical limitations, but because the pixelated style allowed your imagination to run wild and is still beloved by many. How I saw my Pokemon battles back in the day? How they actually look? How I see my Pokemon battles now? How they actually look? But Is this purely nostalgia taking over my mind like a heavily evolved cordyceps?
Only 90s kids remember this.
Am I just a disgusting Gen 1er without a refined palate capable of understanding the complexities and nuances of modern Pokemon? I'd be ignorant if I said I was immune to nostalgia, but I love many things introduced in the new games. I actually really like the XP share and TMs being reusable. Fairy type's fun and co-op was pretty legit. But if you take a little portal into the past, you can clearly see that at the time, Pokemon games were at the top of their class in terms of quality. Games released on the same systems at the same time were very often nowhere near the same quality. Nowadays, modern Pokemon games are just not. They're not even close to the top. Titles released years before them still run and look better with more complexities. Pokemon games are being released either straight up broken or severely lacking in polish or graphical fidelity. It is so fucking sad that Arceus was my favorite Pokemon game in a minute, considering it looks like a museum featuring the bad textures and blurry environments exhibits.
Yes, oh, doesn't it look awful?
Oh, yes, quite.
And Pokemon is the single most profitable media franchise in the history of the world! Really, let that fucking sink in! Yes, right this way, Sinxalor. I'm from Gen 17. They make enough money that they could make every Pokemon game look and feel groundbreaking with fully animated Pokemon.
But you can't do that when you gotta release a game every 9 fucking milliseconds.
And why the fuck would they? They objectively look like shit and still sell like antidote made during the Black Plague.
Yay!
Whoa, hold on, wait, Circle, you stupid, ugly bitch! This last point has nothing to do with the art style of Pokemon. Isn't this about graphical quality and Nintendo rushing out games?
True, and good point. You get a gold star! But these external problems absolutely impact the design of Pokemon and how we experience them. I think these issues are how we got to these warlike debates and such split opinions, because the stages Pokemon are presented on now are extremely different. But alright, have the designs themselves gotten worse? I think Pokemon designs have subjectively gotten worse depending on what you prioritize, but they have objectively changed heavily. Japanese folklore, spiritual history references, and monster-style features are now often replaced with modern, round, chibi characteristics. A snowball effect we've witnessed since the Unova region, the first location not based in Japan, and would subsequently start the departure of Ken Sugimori, who would later go on to only and finally direct the Alolan forms of Pokemon, which interestingly retained his old style in a generation that doesn't match them at all. And it is downright fucking infuriating how Nintendo mishandles the display of new Pokemon. They're not animated enough, often the lighting effects don't do them justice, and the surrounding environments and frame rate dips hurt their image even more. I don't care if my burger is pretty good if the restaurant I'm in is on fucking fire. This is why I love Pokemon cards, because even some of the most egregious designs have outstanding artwork. Here we get to see them in a far more flattering light.
And you know why they look so much better?
Because they're 2D with dynamic static poses!
What could that mean?
So, in summary class, Pokemon designs have changed pretty drastically over the years, but it's up to you as the player to figure out what priorities you have. Do you enjoy monstrous animalistic creatures or more cutesy anthropomorphic dudes? Do you like generations that share the same aspects and characteristics, or do you prefer gens that have completely wild, diverse design elements? Both, I think, are honestly fair, and I think I outlined the objective changes made to help you arrive to that conclusion, and honestly, most of the time your favorite generations are just the ones that accompanied you on your first few journeys. But what do I personally think? Do I think the new generations suck? Well, I think I made my point, but if you must know, I think they're... Oh, yes, you. What's your question?
Is it okay that Megalopony is my favorite Pokemon?